Right, keynote speech and a roadmap for 2024. So some pretty exciting information to go over. Now, I do just want to start. I still am not a big fan of the way information is delivered for Flesh and Blood. So while this is all exciting, there's nothing super factual, right? I wanna say. There's a lot we can interpret and speculate on, which is obviously exciting and fun to do, but it's not like, for instance, set 13, 14. We don't know, are we revisiting X place? They're going to feature X heroes, right? There's not a lot to actually go off concretely here. And then also the other aspect I'm not a big fan of is the way that information is really much just spread apart. So there's dialogue from James White here about the future, right? Then there's just little tidbits in all the different articles. We have the heavy hitters statements here in the World Championship article, and we have the stuff in the actual heavy hitters article, not to mention the heroes and their numbers featured in the Living Legend update. And it often feels like there's no real just concrete log of the information being presented. You really have to dig and be aware of everything going on at the same time, or hop over to Reddit and read through all the comments, because then here's a little hive mind getting together and reinforcing everything that's been discovered and thought about, which is super useful. But I do think that they could probably do it a bit more concisely. And then at the same time, I do think we do need more impactful information. Again, in terms of the heroes, while 15 heroes is exciting, this can mean literally anything, and there's lots of different ways to interpret it, right? Is it 15 new heroes? Is that seven, young adults? Is that 30, right? Is it, 15 by name, 15 by actual format, right? There's just so many ways to interpret and think about this that it's not a very useful statement. It's exciting, don't get me wrong, super excited about it. It's just not super impactful, in my opinion. But nonetheless, right? Well, we're going to do some speculating. So we do have the roadmap. So we know heavy hitters, February, set 13. I think it's early June, right? And then September is late September. That way it's sort of spread out. Now, I know a lot of people are happy with the volume of sets, right? 3 is better to most than, going higher than that. Going 4 is okay, 5, 6, 7, then we're getting into the little scary territory. I do want to say that I think MTG has ruined it for a lot of people, right? With just the useless bombardment of set after set that isn't super impactful. I personally, though, and I continue to sort of restate this, I would like to see more sets for Flesh and Blood. Not monthly, maybe bi-monthly or tri-monthly, but I would like to see more sets. And the reason for that is 3 sets, right? Hero-wise, we have 23 adult, 40 young, and 6 novelty heroes, right? But even if we just look at the 23 adult heroes, plus then you add in the 15 new that we're meant to be getting, right? So we're already close to 40 adult heroes that we have to sort of cycle through, right? It's going to take a few years at 3. And then in terms of classes, similar. 4 classes constructed. Currently, I think it's 11 classes, 3, 6, 9, 11 classes. So even if they're all tri-sets, that's only 9, meaning just over a year to cycle through everyone. Now, I would expect a try, a normal, and then a focus set, right? So what's that? That's 3, 4, that's 8. So it's still going for that year and a bit. Plus, I would also expect a new class this year, right? I think we're all thinking that, it's some sort of just flavorful addition. It's nice to continue expanding the horizon, especially when, again, we have that statement of 15 heroes, 15 heroes of the 11 classes that already exist. It's kind of weird. So either, some of the Blitz heroes coming over and we're getting, a Bard or a Merchant in some form, or even a Shapeshifter that works for class constructed, or potentially, again, a new class. So in terms of Blitz, if we discount, do we want to discount anyone? No, we'll say 14, right? So 3, 6, 9, 13? Did I miscount one? So 13 heroes is still, again, with 3 sets a year, a lot to cycle through, and it's only going to get larger and larger, right? As more heroes are added and more classes are added, right? I do think that what I would like to see is smaller, but closer together sets, right? So I don't mean, every set stay at that, in Australian, it's meant to be $150, right? I think it's like 110 US or something like that, right? Or I think they usually sit around 80, don't they? Not the actual recommended. But yeah, so I don't mean an $80 set every 2 months. No, I mean like a, $40 to $60 set where we strip it down and it's like 100 to 150 cards. It is sole focused on class sets, and maybe chuck in a little bit of the expansion slot, sure, whatever. But that way we can actually get, a lot of content across the board for all the different classes. And it only has to be small things. Now, they obviously might have supplemental products similar to Around the Table. We know we're getting the 6 Blitz with heavy hitters, but this is very open-ended. It's just the standalone boosters. I don't know if he actually says there's not going to be any non-standalone boosters, so he might see a supplemental. I think we're moving away from that because he did state that they'll all be draftable. Now, draftable has its own interpretation because obviously heavy hitters is introducing a different sort of stylization of draft. You've got the crack, shuffle, and play, right? It seems to be every set is going to have its own flavor of limited, right? To make it unique and something to, again, buy and experience to play with, not just to collect, which is cool. But just, again, personally, I would be open to more sets that are smaller, again, more manageable in terms of pricing to counteract the volume of sets. But that way we do get a lot more support across the board for the heroes and the different classes. Now, weirdly enough, right, here's where we can start getting speculative. So heavy hitters, we know is 6 heroes, right? Brute, Guardian, Warrior. I don't know where it was stated. I read it before where it says Kasai will be joined by some new faces and then some old ones. So I assume it's going to be like 3 new, 3 old or something like that. But even in that case, right, we know we're getting Blitz. We know we've seen 2 variations of Kasai. So if we count that as 6 heroes, right, so 3 young, 3 old of the new ones, and then 3 existing Brute, Guardian, Warrior, young and old, right, that's already 6 out of the 15. So that still leaves 9 for the other 2 sets. Now, say we get another 6, okay, that leaves 3. With a singular class set, right, that kind of works perfectly. So that's where I'm leaning towards, right? So we get a tri, singular, and then probably another tri set, and bam, that's a 15. But, again, it's really open for interpretation and the way they interpret it themselves. Because another way to look at it is rather than counting it as 6 new heroes and heavy hitters, right, young and old, if we only count it as 3. That's when it gets a bit more interesting because, right, 3, 3, 3. That's only 9 out of the 15. But then if we chuck in something like Around the Table again and maybe a Classic Battles, what magic number do we get to? 15. So if we get a product like Classic Battles with 2 new heroes, right, that's 2. We get another product like Round Table with 4 new heroes, that's 6. And then if each of these feature 3 new heroes, right, we get our 15. But in terms of actual, hero count across formats, right? Again, you double that, and we're getting, close to 15 because we're getting both the young and old. It's just, I'd like some clarification for a lot of these open-ended statements, right? What do you actually mean by 15 new heroes? Because there are, again, that multitude of ways to look at it, but nonetheless, it is exciting, right? And then, obviously, the other big thing to talk about is the state of the actual competitive scene and the continued growth, which is fantastic. So it's going from 1 mil total to 1.5, which is fantastic, right? It's showing just how healthy the competitive scene and Flesh and Blood and LSS as a company are doing, and that's fantastic to see. It also increases the amount of people who can do this, full time as their job, right? It lowers the threshold, if you will, for, how many events you have to win, where you have to place, right? Because again, it's not that all the prize money is being funneled to the top end. It is spread across everything. And that's fantastic to see, right? This company is doing wonderful things with the competitive scene. Now, the downside of that, right, is PvE. Personally, I got into Flesh and Blood, and I'm pretty sure a lot of us did, under the prospect of PvE. Now, from my understanding and reading through Reddit, it's not coming. It's still not coming in 2024. So this is the 5th year where it's just echo in the wind. And that is disappointing, right? While all this growth is sensational and all their energy and effort is being funneled towards this, that's fantastic. Don't get me wrong, that's fantastic to see. But I do think, we're sort of owed a bit more information on the situation, right? Because it was one of the big things when the game first came out. We're going to have PvP, we're going to have PvE. And yeah, it's 5 years down the road and we get just a few cards here and there. We get a few heroes that, are shaped to be better for PvE, but no real statement or understanding or interpretation from LSS towards any of that, right? Again, going back to the issue I have with the information, there is a lot out there, but there's not a lot of connecting points. It's all open for interpretation, open for speculation. And while that creates excitement, hype, and is interesting to talk about and to think on, right, it's not as impactful as it could be. So I would like to see something coming out of the woodwork, some sort of addressment, some sort of information, right? Just a game plan, if you will, because I think it's been a few times where we want to make sure it's perfect, which is great. That's fantastic. We want to do X, Y, Z before we actually, start talking about. We want to make sure it's completely solid and hole proof. But at the same time, right? That's just continuing to sort of drag us along without actually offering anything substantial. And the term I like to use is we are on a boat with James White, but we don't know where we're going, right? And same can be said for normal sets. We're all excited and hyped up and we're okay to pay the fare and get on board, but we don't know where we're going in the case of most aspects of the game. So yeah, information-wise, I would like to see a bit more, but nonetheless, it is exciting, right? This is still exciting information, right? 3 sets a year, 15 new heroes, fantastic growth across the board for the competitive scene. What more could you ask for besides for, well, information? Now, just to end it off, right? Why don't we play the guessing game? So we know Heavy Hitters is coming out in February. Again, I think it's going to go try, singular, try, or something along that board, even try, singular, and then, the normal standard 4-class set potentially, right? I do think each of them will feature a different limited sort of stylization of play. Again, this whole approach of you want to buy the set to try out this new game mechanic and this play style more than anything, right? You might not be on board with the heroes, but this is your incentive to give it a go, right? Similar to Crack Shuffle Play with Bright Lights. Now, I expect 2 supplemental products. Again, I think another stylization around the table. I don't see why they wouldn't continue it. I don't see why they wouldn't actually use it for the delivery of all Blitz decks going forward. But nonetheless, right, I do expect us to see some sort of round the table product, right? It might not be round the table, but it will be a 4 or 3 or some number of Blitz decks made to be, sort of like a games night from MTG, right? And a Classic Battles, again, another underutilized product to me that is super easy to slap out there. Again, I would personally pick the heroes not featured in the sets, so that way there is content for everyone. In terms of the actual sets, I would fully expect us to go back to Tails. Now, I don't know if they're just cutting out subtypes, right? Because it seems to sort of be the case because they are sort of a weird balance mechanic. Again, going back to the classes, right? We have 11, but then you throw in all the different subtypes and we have what? Light, Shadow, 3 elements, right? And Draconic, so that's 6, plus then, to some extent Royal for 7. So that 11 can then be 18, but it's also multiplicative rather than additive. So, it's a huge number of possible combinations that, again, would be a lot to tackle and expand upon. And with 3 sets, right, I think they are probably gearing to move away from it, but I would expect a return to Tails just because they sort of need to give us back like an Elemental Guardian or, the cards that are necessary to make a lot of the now unplayable cards, because there's no hero to drive it, playable, right? Elemental Guardian is just the big one to my head because both Strava and Oldham are gone, right? So I would expect a return to Tails for one of these sets. And then, yeah, I would expect a singular class set as well. And the best guess, right? So if we are getting a new class, I would fully expect the singular class set to be the way for them to now introduce new classes, just so that they can focus fully on it and they can deliver, a lot of mechanics just for that class. So for instance, with Assassin, when it was first introduced, it was obviously not complete. That's why it had to be spread out across the 2 sets. It needed some heavy new additions to it. So I do think if they go with a single class, I would fully expect it to be the new class. Again, Mechanologist was the least touch class before Bright Lights, and it just seems like the perfect mode of delivery for any new class going forward. So yeah, I would expect a single class set. I would expect it to then also be the new class. I would expect a return to Tails as our sort of themed set, if you will. right? And in that extent, you know, retouching on the elemental subtypes. And personally, I think that their 15 new heroes is going to be more like 30, right? And they are not personally counting the young and old. If they are, I'm going to be a little bit disappointed, right? Because we're going to start off with this huge dump of heroes and heavy hitters, and then just drop off with the other two sets. Nonetheless, exciting, right? Again, I wish it wasn't completely speculative, but what can you do? Hope you enjoyed. See ya.